I've seen a lot of horror in my day. The bloody and gory monster and slasher flicks, the ghosts and ghouls and ghastly possessions, the weird and the demonic, and then the just straight up disturbing. And after a while, it all starts to blend together, and you find yourself quite desensitized. Nothing really gets you anymore unless it's just a shocking jump scare, and you find yourself not as interested in the genre as you once were. But from time to time, you get a golden nugget. You get a Hereditary, which is just so unnerving and creepy that the tone itself is enough to have you crawling into your hoodie in the theater in an attempt to hide from whatever mystery is unraveling on screen. Or you get a Get Out, or Hide and Seek, or A Quiet Place, which aren't necessarily knock your socks off scary, but you start to fall in love with the characters so much that you're just begging for them to have a happy enough ending in which your favorite survives. But the ones I find myself enjoying the most and rewatching the most, especially during the Halloween season, are ones that know how to blend appropriate humor with the horror it's decided to present you with. Movies that truly understand character and never sacrifice what they're building throughout the film just for a cheap joke. Movies like 2017's It. Sorry, what's that? Oh, this is a video on Hocus Pocus? Oh, even better. Hocus Pocus is a great stepping stone for those who aren't desensitized to horror yet. It's what we call a gateway horror. It's a film that has scary components, but it's much more geared towards children, allowing them to first fall in love with the movie and then the genre before it slowly urges them to reach out for more horror as they grow older until they're absolute horror cinephiles, constantly searching for that next great terrified high. And with the release of its 30-year-long awaited sequel, I wanted to take a look at the original and see why it worked so well as a gateway horror in the 90s and became a cult classic for horror fans and non-horror fans alike. We'll also take a look at Hocus Pocus 2 to see what worked and what didn't in its attempt to recreate the magical impression that the first one made, cause let's be honest, that's what majority of the film was trying to do. But you know me, I like to dwell on the positive much more than the negative. One of the most important things that a film has to get right if it's ever going to become a cult classic is its beginning. It's largely said that people will form an impression of you within the first 7 seconds, and if you think it's any different from movies, you're kidding yourself. So with every early decision that Hocus Pocus makes, it's adding to its overall tone and promise to the viewer of what it intends to be as a film. And boy oh boy does Hocus Pocus make some fantastic decisions.
That's why he's the MVP! That's why he's the GOAT!
It kicks off with a spooky choir and a book cover, flipping open the book and revealing ever so slightly a witch flying over a lake, putting you in her perspective as she makes her way to our first setting, the small town of Salem in 1693. The musical arrangement that accompanies this genius introduction is sweeping and fast, giving you a hint of that upcoming pace for the first few scenes, and it's a surprising mix of spooky and playful. Now, I'm not a music theoretician or expert by any means, so go ahead and give it a listen and judge for yourself, but I think you'll find that I'm right in this scenario. It has dark and haunting elements, it's strong and determined, yet there are some whimsical pieces to it that make it a powerful combination of scary and fun. During this great theme, we get some credits for the names attached to the project, and then the story is officially underway, kicking it off immediately with a problem. I'd say Hocus Pocus does everything right here in setting the mood for a spooky, yet children-friendly Halloween film, enticing you with brief glimpses of a flying witch, showing you the town, and beginning the story with Thackeray Binks and his huge problem of a missing sister. It draws you in and makes you feel like you're a part of the film, like you're a citizen of Salem. But now let's compare this to the opening for Hocus Pocus 2 and see how it compares. Right off the bat, the logo animation for Disney being adjusted for a Halloween film, I think is genius. The film hasn't even started yet, and you're instantly put in the mood for a spooky movie. It then uses the water that's part of this new logo to loosely translate a modern retelling of the Hocus Pocus introduction, but this time having us follow a bird, which is later revealed to be a practicing witch. Now, obviously, we're flying alongside the bird here and not seeing things from its perspective, but that's a cherry-picking argument that I don't really want to make. We are then delivered to Salem once again, 40 years earlier than the night of Emily Binks' abduction and the Sanderson sisters' first execution. And similarly, we are thrown right into our first problem for the story, which will connect to and drive our characters' arcs and motivations. Now, I won't compare the actual arcs in themselves, they're subjective, and I think some people will prefer the second over the first, and vice versa, but what we can say objectively is that each film starts things off right, setting the tone for the film and thus delivering its first promise. This film has witches, and it will be spooky at times. But what about everything else? Say, the characters in these stories themselves? Well, I'd say that each film is tackling something unique here. Hocus Pocus 2 doesn't have to worry about making you like the Sanderson sisters, seeing as you're most likely watching the film because you know you do. So instead, it opts to expand upon their lore and upbringing, trying to further establish their relationships as sisters and with the town itself, which will drive its particular story. However, the first Hocus Pocus, the one that really needed to nail down the characters, had only one shot to make a good first impression. And what does it do with the Sanderson sisters? Well, it opens with a joke, of course.
Oh, look. Another glorious morning. Makes me sick.
Is it the strongest joke ever written? No. Is it even the strongest joke within the film? No, and that's a good thing. But is it a smart decision to open with a joke for the technically villains of the film? You friggin' betcha! Again, similar to why the opening theme is such a good tease and setup for the film, opening with a joke allows us as an audience to understand that these villains are not meant to be taken 100% seriously 100% of the time. They're fun, and that's why they work.
Who are you people?
The humor this movie uses, while very outdated in parts, is still genius, especially when it comes to the characterization of our beloved Sanderson sisters. They are great villains that you're asked to root against, yet you can't help but love them because every time you see them on screen, you know you're going to enjoy it. And what's phenomenal about these characters and these movies is that they keep this duality at the forefront. They are fun and whimsical to watch, but they are also scary, kind of like the Three Stooges who have an evil plan. They're as much capable as they are incompetent at times, showing us that they can be fooled and their plans foiled by their biggest rival, simple teenagers.
Open up your mouth.
No!
Oh, boy!
Right after introducing us to the town of Salem and Thackeray, we find the Sanderson sisters in their house in the forest, circling around Emily Binks as we learn what their motivations are and what they find valuable.
I am beautiful. Boys will love me. We're young. Well, younger. But it's a start.
And this first confrontation between Thackeray and the witches is a fantastic setup for the rest of the film as we watch the hilarious sisters bicker and struggle against a young man who simply wants to steal back his sister. The Sanderson sisters remain goofy while Winnie mainly serves as the one who grounds them within their evil roots. I mean, as they're sucking out the life force of this young girl, a truly terrifying and purely evil act, they still somehow remain silly and fun. And that's why this film works as well as it does, because it never forgets what it is and what it wants to be. A scary but fun film. And so, at every point within the film from here on out, it constantly finds a way to mix its sense of humor with its sense of horror, and it consistently works. Whether they're putting a spell on the town while giving one of the best renditions of I Put a Spell on You, or they're being hung and executed while cracking villainous jokes.
What hast thou done with my son, Thackeray?
Thackeray.
Answer me!
Well, I don't know. Cat's got my tongue.
They're easy to trick time after time again, but their charm is genuine. And likewise with Hocus Pocus 2, you can say what you will about the story and our new set of teenager protagonists, but the Sanderson sisters still feel like themselves. In fact, there were moments when they felt even more like themselves in a way. They felt scarier and more evil, and at times even funnier. Whenever they were on screen, I was enjoying the film. Now, there are other parts of the sequel that I really enjoyed, and some that I wasn't as crazy about, but the heart of these films lies within the Sanderson sisters. They're what makes these films enjoyable and worth watching in the first place. But okay, so these films start out strong, and they have a good sense of character, mainly with our antagonists, who can be just as funny as they are evil, and sometimes at the same time. But there's one more thing that puts Hocus Pocus over the top, and helped it to become a cult classic, in my opinion. Not every person who watches these films will enjoy them. I personally did not expect to, as I actually didn't grow up with these films. I first saw Hocus Pocus only 4 years ago, as my fiance loved the movie and eagerly watched it with me, hoping that I would love it too. She knew I was a huge horror fan, but I knew Disney liked to pull its punches, so I was utterly shocked by how scary the film actually was. I constantly looked at her, smiling and whispering, "Wow, this is way spookier than I would have imagined." And after countless viewings since, I think I've narrowed down exactly why. Yes, the characters are evil, and yes, the actresses give great performances to make me believe that they actually are. But as is the case with any film that utilizes special effects, the more practical they are, the realer they feel. We already touched upon how Hocus Pocus makes you feel like you're a part of the world in the very beginning, so the more real the effects come off, the realer the danger feels and more scared you can become. Let's take another look at that first scene in the forest. The set is beautifully crafted to keep that spooky tone at the forefront, with a giant black cauldron oozing with green magical liquids and tons of other spooky, witchy trinkets lying about. And when the confrontation begins, special effects work wonders as we see them begin to suck Emily's life force, and Winnie uses whimsical bolts of electricity to strike down Thackeray Binks. But the scariest spell in this whole scene, at least for me, is when we stare down into their eyes from the perspective of Thackeray Binks and watch as he does the Sanderson sisters perform a hypnotizing, alluring spell of turning him into a black cat forever.
Twist the bones and bend the back.
Trim him of his baby fat.
Give him fur black as black, just like this.
The language, the rhythm, and the "I can't believe I lost to these silly witches" realization all add up to this dehumanizing feeling that makes this part so scary. And as the film progresses, it uses visual effects minimally, opting for real effects such as makeup with the zombie, painting out strings attached to our flying witches, and in a live set equipped with movable pieces to make the trembling earth feel all the more real, and thus the consequences and stake all the more terrifying. And personally, that's when I think Hocus Pocus 2 is at its best as well, trying to hold on to what worked in Hocus Pocus and keep the distance in years between the releases feel as irrelevant as possible. Personally, I was really worried going into that final act and final showdown, but the way they handled the magic came off really well in my opinion. I felt like there was love for the project and staying true to its roots, and no matter how you feel about the story and the character arcs, the movie feels like a real continuation of the first. In the end, I think Hocus Pocus and its sequel serve as great gateway horror films that allow children to partake in the spooky fun without having to worry about nightmares or being too scared to finish the film. But those are just my thoughts as a huge avid horror fan who didn't grow up with Hocus Pocus but found it later in life and fell in love with it instantly. I definitely think it still holds up after all these years, and my hope is that Hocus Pocus 2 will do the same over the next 30 years. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know I had a lot of fun making it, but let me know if you agree with my takes. Why do you think Hocus Pocus is as good as it is, or at least why it has been so well received over the years? I'd love to hear your thoughts and keep the discussion going in the comments section. And if you completely disagree and you hate both of these movies, I would also love to hear why. I know it's not for everyone, but I'd still love to hear people's opinions on what didn't work for them. Leave a like if you want to see more videos like this, share it with a friend, leave a comment, and subscribe if you want to help the channel. But either way, I hope you guys have a spooktacular Halloween. I will see you all next time.